to your mind.
Breathe. I stay quiet as I light on my loud light. Breathe. A balanced diet, I'm just trying to get my pounds right. Breathe. I stay quiet as I light on my loud light. Breathe. A balanced diet, I'm just trying to get my pounds right. Shouts all on my team, I need more than a mattress support. In my dreams, could grab a few Zeds like I'm falling asleep, but I don't wanna wake for the morning. Grief, breathe. Tears drop to the form in the sea. A broke heart, but it's worn in my sleeve. Never listened, I was warned in my teens, but I still skipped school, I was taught in the streets. Ring back, don't call for police. Stand tall, don't fall for the beast. Got issues with trust, so I'm born to believe. We've been a victim of love and now we're caught in it deep. Breathe.
Yes, people, what's happening? And welcome back to GavGoesIn. So yeah, listen, part 2 of my time in the academy at Tottenham. Again, if you haven't seen some of my other streams, obviously I've done the Chelsea one, part 1 and part 2. And obviously the Tottenham one was last week. And then obviously I go through my part 2 of me at the academy. And again, if you guys have any questions, anything that you want to know from my time there are a few things that I am going to touch on. But if there's anything that you guys want to know, then feel free to put that into the live chat. And yeah, I'll try my best to answer them as and when. And again, guys, when you come through, if you can just smash that like button, and if you can just sub to the channel as well. And as I said, yeah, keep your questions and comments coming through, and I will get onto them. So anyway, let's start off. So again, part 1, I spoke about how I started off at Tottenham. I was at Chelsea for 6 years back in the academy, and then I decided to leave and go to go to Tottenham. Sorry. I think mainly because of the traveling. Traveling was very tiring, but mainly because of how some of the coaches, how they kind of saw me over there, and I thought I'll have a better chance of going to Tottenham. So again, yeah, some of the players in my age group back then, Jamie O'Hara was the same age group. You had Charlie Daniels, both players played in the Premiership. One played obviously for Tottenham, Jamie O'Hara, and the other played for Charlie Daniels played for Bournemouth at left back. And then you had Phil Ifill, who actually made his debut for Tottenham as well. And so yeah, they were some of the players in my age group. And as I spoke about last week, in terms of ability, I definitely was one of the best players in my age group in the academy, no doubt. But obviously certain things did go against me, and again, it is what it is. So I spoke about that last week, and I spoke about some standout games that I had as well, where as I said, there was a game that I actually played in. Didn't start the game, scored a couple of goals, and then the coach actually turned around and said to me, it's too easy for me. But it was more of a case of not embarrassing some of the players that they favored, So anyway, I'm going to go on to part 2, yeah. And this is a memory that I will always remember in regards to my time at Tottenham. Now, basically, yeah, if anyone remembers the whole work experience, so a lot of people that done work experience, whether they go and work in retail, I think a lot of people from my school days actually went to work in retail, or whether they went to work with family members, I don't know. But a lot of these things were about. Now, for me, my work experience came, funny enough, at Tottenham, in the academy. So part of my work experience was to basically become an at the time it was under 17s and under 19s. So it was basically to become an under 17 player and just practice being a full-time player at that age, and meaning obviously training every day, match on the weekend, on a Saturday, and just literally just living like a pro, and obviously interacting with the first team players and that as well. So again, this is something that will always stand out for me. You know, something that will always stick in my mind. Um, and guys, as I said, yeah, keep the questions and comments coming through, and I will get back to them after. So this is a stage in my career at Tottenham which will always stand out to me. So as I said, I've done work experience at Tottenham for 2 weeks, and that was again, I was the youngest player there with the older age group, and it was again just practicing being, you know, a full-time player. So, you know, you would come in, you would have obviously your breakfast with the first team squad, with the youth players as well, and then you'd go out for training. And yeah, I say it was every day, match on a Saturday, recovery on a Sunday, you know, and that was my first experience of, you know, living like a pro full time. Now, the reason why this was key for me, yeah, because bearing in mind, you know, you can always tell how certain coaches, you know, would treat you in a sense, you know, in terms of how they see you at the club. And my coach at Tottenham was a guy called Dave Kerslake, who was a former first team player for Tottenham. And I ended up going to the older age group, being managed by, I think he actually passed away a little while ago. His name was Jimmy Neighbor, who was the older age group's manager. So basically, you know, I came in, you know, playing with the older players, and a lot of the older players there, you know, they were players that the club were trying to push into the first team. You know, I'm not sure if you're a Tottenham fan, you probably might have heard of some of the players back in the day. There was a striker called Michael Malcolm. You know, he was rated highly, played for England as well, younger age groups. And then you had another player called Owen Price as well. He was another one. And then again, guys, there's a player that a lot of you will be surprised. Yeah. Ipswich Town's manager, Kieran McKenna. So Kieran McKenna was the year older than me at Tottenham. So yeah, he was in the he was part of that team as well with the Michael Malcolms and the Owen Prices. So again, yeah, Kieran McKenna was actually, I believe he was the captain for the academy, the older age group. So there was times obviously that, well, I say times, obviously I was training, you know, for 2 weeks with himself and obviously that team as well. And it was the first experience I had, yeah, of just training every day and just showing, you know, the older manager basically, you know, what I had, you know, because again, there was players that the club, you know, preferred ahead of me. But my experience in the 2 week experience at Tottenham was the one chance that I had to show that, you know, I've got what it takes in a sense. And I'll never forget this game. So we had a training game and we played against the under 19s. So bearing in mind, you know, I was what was I, 15 or 16 at the time. And bearing in mind we're playing against the under 19s. And I remember the under 19s manager was a guy called Pat Holland, you know, and he's someone out of all the coaches that were at Tottenham, he's one of the coaches that I had time for because, you know, he's one of the ones that, you know, he said something that kind of helped me out in that sense from my 2 week training, 2 week work experience at Tottenham. And we played against the under 19s, you know, and under 19s had players. Again, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he made a first team appearance for them. A striker called Jamie Slabber. Again, if you're a Tottenham fan from the 90s, you know, you probably would have heard of these players. You had Mark Yates as well, Irish player, who I think went on to play for the first team. So we played against them in a training game. And again, bearing in mind, you know, I was 15 or 16 at the time, and played against the under 19s. Again, it's a training game, innit? But it still goes a long way. And we actually beat the under 19s. And I played as a striker with Michael Malcolm. And again, Michael Malcolm was looked at as the young up and coming striker coming through the youth at the time, along with Jamie Slabber, who actually made his first team debut for Tottenham, you know. And again, it was my first opportunity to play as a striker with him, you know. And we actually beat the under 19s 2-1. And I scored one and set up the other one as well. And after the game, the under 19s manager, Pat Holland, said to the under 17s manager at the time, bearing in mind, yeah, like there wasn't really too much dealings with these coaches and myself. But he actually said to the under 17 coach, you know, oh, who's that who's that striker? And he said, obviously, GavGoesIn kind of thing. Obviously not my real name, but still, yeah. And he said, oh, you should give him a chance on the weekend. And I actually overheard the conversation. And what it does, guys, yeah, it goes to show you, yeah, if you put the work into anything and you're committed, sooner or later, your fortunes are going to change. And that was my first experience of being recognized by the coaches there, because ability-wise in my age group, there's no doubting that I was one of the best players in my age group. And again, this age group consisted of the likes of Jamie O'Hara. Again, Jamie O'Hara was signed by Tottenham as soon as I arrived, and he was bought from Arsenal for £1 million, and I arrived at the same time. And again, I can honestly say in that age group there, I was definitely one of the best players, but it was a case where I joined Tottenham very late, and they had already had their favoured players that they were looking at, in a sense, But then I'd say going on the work experience, it definitely helped out. And as I said, that was a massive thing for me, because it was literally every day, training, as I say, meeting the pros. And then I got a chance to play against West Ham. Again, the West Ham team, consisted of Mark Noble in there. I think Chris Cohen, who actually went to play for Nottingham Forest, was in there as well. And a couple of other players that I think made a couple of first team appearances for West Ham at the time. And yeah, basically, this is another standout moment for me. Yeah. So I must have got to the training ground early. And basically, as I've got there early, I've bumped into none other than Robbie Keane. If anyone remembers Robbie Keane, in actual fact, Robbie Keane's actually just resigned today from duty from Ferencváros. He was manager of them. But Robbie Keane came in, obviously part of the first team. And I happened to bump into him before, because I got there early. And, in his stiff Irish accent, said to me, like, obviously, yeah, he just greeted me when I came in. And I said to him, yeah, I'm playing for the older age group today, and he said to me, good luck, he said to me, good luck. And then for about 5 minutes, we were just keeping the ball up, because again, no one else was there. I got there about an hour early, and obviously he was coming in for first team training. So me and him were just keeping it up, 2-touch. And again, that was a massive experience for me, because at the time, Robbie Keane was arguably the best player at Tottenham at the time, and he had the number 22 shirt on, and then went to number 10 as well. And as I said, man, yeah, that was a massive opportunity for me, to talk to, and get some coaching tips off Robbie Keane, man. And again, Robbie Keane went on to play for Inter Milan as well, obviously formerly of Coventry. What a striker he was, and I think he's a striker for me that doesn't really get the credit he deserves, because he's one of the best strikers to play for Tottenham, but Tottenham weren't a Champions League sort of team when he was there, but my experience of meeting him, for a brief 5-10 minutes was massive, and that gave me confidence going into the game, playing for the older age group for sure. So, yeah, that was a massive experience for me, man. And as I said, man, that's something that will live with me forever. I've met a lot of the first team players, Teddy Sheringham that was there at the time, Ledley King, I think Maurizio Tarico, who was a right-footed left back. He weren't no Philip Lahm, but he was still a good fullback. And yeah, so as I said, I've met a lot of the first team players. And as I said, I got given that opportunity, having been at the younger age group, but doing my work experience and being given an opportunity based off of a training game, and as I said, being 15 years of age, playing against the under 19s at the time, some of them players were pushing for the reserves, pushing for the first team, and I was given the one chance. And as I said to you, scored a goal, set one up, and played very well, and was given my kind of my berth from there. Before I carry on, let me go into some of your comments, guys. Bangladesh in the house, big up to big up yourself, man, for coming through. Big up to Fitz each and every time as well. Big up to Babs One Diva. Big up to Babs One Diva with the super sticker. Yeah, big up yourself. Big up yourself. You were a Spurs player before. So, yep, I was in the Spurs academy. So I was at Chelsea for 6 years, and I was at Tottenham for 2 years. So yeah, I was there, man. Back in the 90s, I think. Yeah, back in the 90s. Yeah, mid 90s, I want to say. So yeah, man. As I said, I've had some mad experiences in football, and as I said, yeah, crazy. What position did you play in Spurs Academy? So again, very similar to my time at Chelsea. Yeah. So I was a striker, but what you have to realize, yeah, back when I was in the academy, it was the era of 4-4-2. So again, if you're left-footed, you were more or less played out on the wing, and because left footers were rare in that era of football. And bearing in mind that I'm 5'7", at the time I was quick as well. I'm left-footed, and these things were a rarity in the game. Their go-to was, play him on the wing. That's literally what it was. But I was actually a striker, and at both clubs, when I was given the opportunity to play in my position, there was times when I was overshadowing what they had. But again, they obviously, had their reasons for wanting to play me there. A lot of it was based on the pace. But I was more of a footballer than I was, a pace merchant in a sense. So yeah, that's what it was, man. But yeah, both clubs both played me as a left winger, you would say back then. Obviously the inverted now is a lot different, but yeah, back then it was as a left winger. But I saw myself as a striker, and as I said, I got given a chance to play as a striker, and yeah, I took my opportunities, but in the end, it wasn't really enough. So anyway, going back to what I was saying, guys, yeah. So we actually played West Ham. Obviously for the older age group, and like I say, before that age group consisted of the likes of Mark Noble, Chris Cohen, and a few others that went on to play in West Ham's first team. And I'll never forget this as well, yeah. And if players in my age group, so the likes of Jamie O'Hara. Again, Jamie O'Hara was training when I was doing my 2-week work experience. He was part of it as well. But the likes of the other players that were favored in my age group that wasn't training full time because I was doing my work experience, a lot of them didn't actually realize that, I was training full time with the older age group. And what that showed you is that if I'm training full time, with my natural talent and my commitment, I showed what I could do within 2 weeks, whereas as a schoolboy, you're training 2 to 3 times a week. But I showed what I could do, training full time. A lot of the players in my age group didn't actually realize I was doing full time with the older age group. And I remember when we come in for the game, when we're in the changing rooms, a lot of the players in my age group, they were shocked to see me in the change room. So a lot of them, as I say, they knew who the favored players were in that age group. So when I'm rocking up in there, they're kind of surprised, isn't it? And then literally what happened, one of the 2 of the strikers that were favored in my age group were there obviously for the game against West Ham in the change room. And then the team sheet comes out, and I'm starting the game with the striker from that age group. And again, you could see that that both of them in my age group were shocked because, again, a lot of them didn't really expect that, And as I said, yeah, we played against West Ham. I had a decent game. I wouldn't say that, I was outstanding, but there was good things I did well, and there was things that I could improve on as well. No doubt. But what I would say is my first game playing for that older age group, it was more of a opportunity to show them that I should have been given a chance. But again, these guys were under pressure because they had already chosen their favored players, even though I was better than them. But these guys had been there for a lot longer than what I was, And then to myself, I could have done better, but I had a good game still. But then obviously halftime, I think we were losing the game 1-0, and then halftime I come off, and then they replaced me with the striker in my age group as a sign of we've given you your chance. And in their eyes, I didn't take it, which was harsh. And then they brought the other striker on from my age group, and it's not like he made a difference because we ended up losing the game 2-0. So it was frustrating in that sense because working hard for that 2 weeks, and then getting that start, and then yeah, literally, it was a thing where that was a chance that you could arguably say I didn't take, or it was taken away from me in that sense. But yeah, it was frustrating, put it that way. But then from there, obviously, I did end up playing for the older age group on a regular basis. Actually, there's a couple of games I played against Aston Villa. Funny enough, and Aston Villa had a striker again that played for England in the younger age. I think he got to the under 19s or 21s. I can't remember. Luke Moore. If anyone remembers Luke Moore from that time, he was rated very highly by the country and by Aston Villa. He ended up playing for the first team as well with his brother Stefan, I believe. So yeah, I played a couple of games for the older age group, really. And I think what people need to realize is that if you're one of the players that are playing for the older age group, you're more or less being looked at as someone that they're literally going to take on for a pro, basically, because that's how it works out in that age group, And as I said, from my age group, the only one that was guaranteed that pro was Jamie O'Hara, because they bought him from Arsenal, so he was the only one that was guaranteed, really. But yeah, just back onto to my opportunities there. That was the one opportunity that you could arguably say that slipped my grasp, really, but I definitely did deserve more. But then what happened is that I think after that work experience, I think another 3 or 4 months on from then, it was them deciding, if they're going to release or offer you your pro contract, more or less, yeah. And I knew to myself anyway that I wasn't going to be offered that pro contract because of how you can just see little things of how you're treated. But my thing was, I proved myself training week in week, training every day, and that was some of the opportunities that I needed. Yeah. So again, when it come down to the meeting, obviously I went along with the meeting with my my late father, and I also went with again, probably, I'm not sure if a lot of you have heard of someone called Mark Wright. You've probably heard of the guy before. So again, I've known him from young, and his dad was the one that actually got me into Tottenham in the first place. Yeah. So again, I went to the meeting along with himself and with my late father, and this is something that will always stick with me, and I look at this as a missed opportunity. Yeah, because going into that meeting, I had already prepared myself that I was going to be released from Tottenham on that day. But then what happened? We got into the meeting, and the director at the time was a guy called John Moncur. I don't know if any of you know if any of you would have heard of that name. His dad his son was the one that used to play for West Ham, funny enough, but he was our academy director at the time. And he actually said to me, obviously sitting down in the meeting, he said that Burnley have come in for you. And this was the time when Burnley were in the Championship. Yeah. But bearing in mind, Burnley was a long travel, and I was someone that wanted to stay local, But he said to me, Burnley have come in for you, and they've offered you a 1-year scholarship and a 1-year pro, which, I had a decision to make. And part of me was thinking, because I'm someone that has stayed in. Again, if you've played in the academy scene, yeah, then you would have had the chances of staying in what they call digs, which is where you stay with another family for however long. And obviously you're training at a club, but you're having to make things happen, but you're away from your family, you're just staying with another family, and it's kind of hard to acclimatize to. So I've done that before, and again, you prefer your own surroundings, because you're living with a family, and you don't really know your surroundings in the area, and you're literally, what you're doing is just training, which it can be difficult. So what I decided to do, yeah, for me, I look back and now, and I think, what, I should have just took up the option. They're in the Championship, but they're offering you a pro contract and a scholarship. I should have took the opportunity. But what I did, offer the advice as well. I decided to turn that down. I also had offers from Italy as well. You know, a couple of Serie A B sides as well were interested, but I decided to turn that down and go on trial to League One, League Two teams. You know, and again, the style of football back then wasn't to my liking. You know, I'm someone that is ball to feet. Ice cream van messing up my stream. Sorry guys, ice cream van in the background, man. My bad. He stopped now. So yeah, I turned down the Burnley. You know, obviously there was interest from Italy as well, which I didn't really pursue as much. You know, but then it was the trials for the League One teams. You know, now bearing in mind, as I said, you know, League One, League Two football is, you know, back to front. That ain't my type of game. Bearing in mind, you know, I was still having ambitions of being a striker as well. So League One, League Two was very rarely gonna map out for me in a sense, yeah. But then I went on trial to Southend, to Dagenham and Redbridge, Rushden and Diamonds, Cambridge United as well. And again, technically, you know, I was more than good enough, but physically I wasn't ready, you know. And a lot of the players they actually took on, you know, were your 6-footed athletes, strong, that were very advanced for that age, you know. And I wasn't one of them, unfortunately. You know, I was more on the technical side, and I probably would have fared a lot better if I was if I went to like a Spain, somewhere like that, where the ball's kept on the ground. And again, that should give you guys an insight, yeah, as to some of the players that I rate, because a lot of the players I rate, you know, are reminiscent of how I like to see the game played. You know what I'm trying to say? So, so yeah, as I said, like that was an opportunity. I went to them trials. Nothing really materialized from there, and then ended up, you know, playing a bit of Ryman football for Grays Athletic, and then yeah, just fizzled out to just playing five-a-side really, you know. But the one opportunity that I had when I got released from Tottenham was the Burnley, because it's not every time, you know, every player gets offered a pro contract and a scholarship to go with it. Oh, sorry, a scholarship and a pro contract to go with it, you know. And I look back now and I think, yeah, that was my biggest regret, that one. But again, like, you know, you live and you learn, and I can look back now and say, you know what, I've had some mad experiences, a lot of experiences that a lot of people probably haven't had. And this is why I'm so passionate about football, you know, and this is why I say, you know, you don't have to agree with my opinion, you know, but a lot of what I say comes from experience in certain things, you know. And as I said, man, like my time in the academies, a lot of players now, you know, in the academies now, again, I'm not quite sure how it is, but there's a lot more, I would call it aftercare for these players. Because when I got released, it was you're left to your own devices, and you have to kind of get on with it, you know what I'm trying to say? So it was one of them things. But yeah, now I obviously, you can probably tell it's nothing like that. But back in the the mid 90s, I would say, yeah, it was, we're getting rid of you and that's it. You got to find your own way. And that's literally how cutthroat it was, you know. But again, I look back and I look at the experiences from players played against, from memories. As I said, if you haven't seen the Chelsea one, you know, I've had experiences of playing against Wayne Rooney when I was 14. Ridiculous player. Samir Nasri, one of the best players I've played against. You know, obviously Kieran McKenna, who is the Ipswich manager right now, was in the older age group at Tottenham when I was there. And again, Jamie O'Hara, Charlie Daniels, a lot of them have played in first teams for Tottenham or Bournemouth, you know, and a few other players as well that I've experienced playing against. So I've had mad play. Yeah, I've had mad experiences from grounds played at, from players played against, you know, meeting the pros as well, being a ball boy at Chelsea. Like being a ball boy was mad because I didn't know what to expect. But yeah, I was ball boy about 8 or 9 times. And then obviously it's part of being a ball boy, you go into the players' lounge as well. That happened at Chelsea. So yeah, I've had so many experiences, man. So many experiences. And yeah, like this is why I like talking on things like this, innit? So and as I said, I got my channel now that, You know, it's just proper footballing talk. You know, and if you're someone that loves your football, you know, or you've had a similar experience to me in that regard, then yeah, share your stories, because as I said, man, a lot of it might be reminiscent of what I went through. But yeah, I would say the one opportunity that I would, because I know someone's asked me in the chat already, the one opportunity that I would say, you know, that was a regret, was the Burnley opportunity. That was a massive regret, because, you know, if I'd have just agreed to that opinion, if I'd have just agreed to that offer, you never know, man. You never know. I could have had a career, even if it wasn't in the Premier League, it would have been in the Championship. You know, because as I said, I proved that training every day, you know, I was getting better and better. You know, and that's what I needed to go with the natural talent as well. You know, and that's it, really, guys. I'm gonna go into some of your questions and comments again. If anyone's got any questions or comments, then put them in, and I'll answer them. What did you wish you would do different? Yeah, I think I've kind of answered that one. The Burnley one is definitely one. The Italy opportunity as well. You know, they're ones that I wish I made a different decision, a different choice. But again, I was young at the time, innit? And it was one of them things where, you know, I was a different person in comparison to what I am now. You know what I mean? And yeah, obviously, offer the advice of, you know, someone that I've already mentioned already. I kind of turned that down, you know, and that was probably didn't go in my favor, of course. Big up Baz One Diva says, Gav, wow, Robbie Keane. Gav, you should be proud of your achievements in the academy. Yeah, listen, I'm proud of it. Don't get me wrong, you know, but yeah, these were the kind of things that I was doing back then, innit? It's not really a surprise when you're in that environment. So yeah, man. Fitz says kicking the ball about with Robbie Keane is a madness. Yeah, bro. Robbie Keane was I mean, he's stiff Irish accent, man. And as I said, it was a brief, like 5 or 10 minutes chat with him and just keeping the ball up. And again, that only happened because I got in early, you know, at the training ground, because obviously he was coming in for first team training, you know, and I happened to get in early, you know, trying to make an impression like that, really. And then, as I said, I come across him and we just started chatting, and he asked me, you know, how comes I here? I said to him, yeah, I'm playing for the older age group. And, you know, he just said to me, good luck. And then, you know, we just started doing some keepy ups. And again, yeah, that was a massive thing for me, man. Like, as I said, he was, at the time, he was probably the main player in the first team. And to have that experience of keeping the ball up with Robbie Keane, man, yeah, that was massive for me, you know. Weather in Manny is banging, so down south it must be crazy. Ice Cream Man is getting his paper up today. Yeah, trust me, man. The sun is in full effect today, man. But again, the next couple of days is meant to be nice anyway, you know. But yeah, I'm guessing it's going to be like that in Manchester as well. The weather consistently like this. So I think up until next week. Is it Wednesday or Thursday? I think it's going to be like this. So, yeah, man, long may it continue. You know, long may it continue. Gav, now looking back, do you wish you took the opportunity to go to Italy? 100%. But I wouldn't say it was a regret in that sense, because I was young, you know what I mean? And it's one of them things, yeah, that because I was young, you know, you aren't gonna make some of the choices that you'd make when you're older, unfortunately. So I look at it as more of a missed opportunity rather than a regret, because had I have been, you know, a lot older or just a bit more, I wouldn't say switched on, but a bit more, you know, how I am now with that mindset, again, I would have made that decision, you know. But when Burnley come in, but the Burnley one was annoying, because the Burnley one, there was a guaranteed pro contract there waiting, you know, with a scholarship, you know. And as I said, that was the big opportunity, because because the Italy one was more of a trial. You know what I'm trying to say? And that's what happens when you, and again, you there's exit trials as well they have. So when you get released from the academies, they have exit trials where you go to a place where all the players that have been released from clubs, they go to a thing called exit trials, and all the Premier League teams are there. You know, there's other teams as well from abroad. They go and watch the exit trials, and I went to a couple of them. So yeah, there was massive opportunities that were missed. You know what I mean? But the Italy one was more of a, you know, it wasn't a regret. It was more of a, I was too young to make that bold decision. But the Burnley one, really is annoyance because that was off of advice. You know, the advice was to not go to Burnley, and it was to try and go on trial to like League One, League Two teams, which was frustrating. You know, but it is what it is. Look, the number one fan is back. The number one fan is back. I knew you'd be back. Number one fan. Number one fan. Big up to Lumi Rain as well. Big up to Lumi. So Lumi says, did you ever get promised anything to join a club, like a few cup games, etc.? No, I mean, the only thing I was offered really from a club was, as I said to you before, the 1 year scholarship and the 1 year pro from Burnley. That was the only thing really. And then obviously a trial offer at for a Serie A B side, you know. But yeah, nothing else. But in terms of being in the academy, man, like, you know, you get offered loads of little perks, the ball boys, you know, tickets to go and watch the first team play. Yeah, all these things were normal if you're in the academy. Like, I think people that will be like, wow, you done all that. Well, yeah, I mean, when you're playing for the academies, man, these things are expected, really. You know, playing on the ground, playing on the home stadiums as well. So I say I played at Stamford Bridge about 9 or 10 times. You know what I mean? And as I say, it's to be honest with you, it's not really a great pitch. I'll be honest, in comparison to some of the other grounds I've played at. So yeah. If you joined Burnley, would you have got into the first team? But that was the task, because when they're offering you a pro contract, that is basically their way of saying, look, you're going to be training full time, you know, and it's up to you to try and force your way into our first team. That's what I'm saying. And they offered me a scholarship, which is 1 year of a if anyone doesn't know what a scholarship is, obviously back then it was called the YTS, which stands for Youth Training Scheme. So it was a 1 year full-time training with the offer of a 1 year a 1 year pro contract. And that's what they offered me. But as I said, you know, wrong decisions off the advice didn't happen, you know. But yeah, like my task would have been, you know, first and foremost to get into the reserve team, show some promise there, and then get into the first team. That was the path, you know. And I think at the time, if I remember right, if anyone remembers Burnley's strikers at the time, they had a player called Robbie Blake. I think he was a striker at the time. And they had, who was the other one? Robbie Blake and someone else. I can't remember the other person. But yeah, I'm talking like obviously back in the 90s, you know. So yeah. And you know what? I knew someone would ask me this, yeah. I knew someone would ask me this question. So who advised you? Sounds like they did you a disservice. You know, and again, I didn't really want to answer this because I don't like to go over old ground, yeah. But I mentioned to you guys earlier, there was you guys have probably heard of a guy called Mark Wright. You've probably heard of that name before. You know, again, you've probably heard the name. So his dad was at the time, he was the one, as I said, that got me into Tottenham when I left Chelsea, and it was off of his advice to turn down the Burnley offer. So yeah, man, it was annoying because myself, my dad, and himself went into the meeting, and yeah, obviously they had their I was young, so I didn't really have much of a voice like that, you know what I mean? But when they offered me the deal, when he told me that Burnley have offered the deal, he decided to take me to trial at League One, League Two teams. So yeah. Mark Wright was in Tottenham too. Yeah, Mark. I know Mark Wright from young. Like we both play for the same Sunday League team, so I know him very well. Obviously, I don't really talk to him no more. You know what I mean? Obviously, you grow apart, but I know him very well. And again, his dad was the one that got me in at Tottenham, because his dad was actually my Sunday League team. He was actually the coach, my Sunday League team. And again, yeah. Again, I don't really want to go into these kind of stories, because these kind of stories, you know, obviously those that are close to me will know these stories. But in a sense, I cut a long story short, it was his dad kind of fucked me over really by getting in Mark, who I've known from young, to basically replace me at Tottenham. That's basically what happened, you know. And again, I don't really like to go over this kind of story, but yeah, there's a lot of things you guys probably don't even know, but yeah, his dad basically fucked me over by getting in his son to replace me. Cut a long story short. So again, I know him from young, and to be done like that, yeah, is crazy, really. But again, I don't want to dwell on things like that too much, because it happened, and yeah, these things are an absolute joke. But these things go on, guys. Unfortunately, that is why when if anyone remembers when, you know, he ended up playing for Crawley Town, you know, you have to look at the fact that players that have been, you know, probably with Crawley Town for how long, and then he just rocks up and gets in there because of his name, you know. So I know full well, you know, how people there that wasn't given that opportunity would feel. I know that full well. So yeah. Were you better than Mark? 100% I was better than him. Not even joking. Again, he was a left back. Because if you actually remember, he was at West Ham, and he played left back for West Ham. And then basically what happened is that part of the academy team that I was in at Tottenham, basically he came in to replace me. And it meant that Charlie Daniels, who actually went on to play for Bournemouth in their first team, Charlie Daniels actually went to left wing, and then Mark Wright went to left back, and that meant there was no place for me. And that's literally what happened. And again, a lot of you probably don't even know this story, but you know, that's something for you to get to get your head around, you know. Yeah, listen, but I'm not even like that peed off really, because again, if your dad's got influence somewhere and he can get your son in somewhere, unfortunately these things happen. You see it happen all too many times, isn't it? And unfortunately, I was the casualty of that. You know what I'm trying to say? But there was no chance he was better than me. No chance. You know what I mean? But this is why I mentioned to you guys about relatability. Relatability is a thing in football, and you see it even in football now. And even back then, you know, these things played its part. So, sorry how it worked out, but you're doing well now. Yeah, listen, I'll be honest now. Yeah, I'll be honest. It's taken me years to get over that. You know, and I can honestly say, yeah, I've probably got over that. Probably about a year ago, I would say, because what you don't realize, yeah, this is why I'm so invested in football, because football is all I know, you know. And I'm probably going a bit more into my life story, yeah, but it's one of them things where, you know, I didn't achieve at school not one bit. Didn't achieve at school because my life was football, you know, to a point where like school was sacrificed for football. And then when football doesn't work out and you've been unjust in that, you know, it is quite hard to overcome that. And I never forget, yeah, when you know, I think I done a sit down like talk with someone, a Spurs fan, like, and he's the one that done the write up of me actually. And I remember there was a story going around about Mason Greenwood had a friend that was in Man City's academy, and I think he actually committed suicide because he had been at the academy his whole career, and I think he got released, and then it was too much for him, and he committed suicide. Now I can fully understand how it makes you feel, stuff like that. Because if you've invested your whole life, your whole career into football, and then, you know, you get released or it's been taken away unjust. These things are real, you know what I'm trying to say? And again, if you haven't really been in that environment, then you won't know how that kind of feels, in it, kind of thing. But yeah, these things are real, man. These things are real. But nah, big up to yourself, Lumi. As I said, like, this is why my channel is a massive thing for me, because it's a chance to share my experiences of what I've done, and it's a chance to just talk football, man, because football is just something that I just know, you know what I'm trying to say? Because it's just what I just yeah, it's the one thing that I know in life, football. You know, I've been watching it for 39 years, you know, and as I said, I've coached, I've played, you know, and I've just consumed football for the entirety. So it's one of them things. Big up to Foxy Danny as well for coming through. Big up. Yeah, big up, Lumi. It's clear how talented you are from the videos. Yeah. No, listen, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Again, that's 5-a-side. Like, I wish the video was being recorded when I was young, man. When I was literally, you know, in my early 20s. You know, it'd have been a lot better, because I look at myself now and some of the clips then, like, that's me getting older. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, not in my prime, really. But yeah, there is still some good things there. But again, I'm someone that, you know, physically I've got a lot bigger as well. You know, I train 5-6 times a week, you know, and that's bound to have an effect, obviously, if you're playing 5-a-side, because you're a lot heavier. But back when I was in my prime playing 5-a-side, man, yeah, I was an absolute problem. You know, we used to go over to different areas and compete against other teams. You know, if you guys remember the Scorpion tournaments, the Ronaldinho days, you know, we used to go over to the Scorpion tournaments and just batter teams. So yeah, it was that, really, you know. But as I said, yeah, I've had mad experiences, and yeah, as I said, I think my most recent, again, you guys probably know this anyway, my most recent experience of playing 5-a-side was playing against Rio Ngamoa. And as I said, man, he's going to be a future international. And funny enough, actually, I'm looking at Sky Sports right now, and he's going with the England squad for the warm-up games. And he's going to be a future England international, because he's a top player, man. Top player. And there's no doubting about that, man. And as I said, like, first-hand experience, man, of playing against him 5-a-side, man. He's a problem. You know what I'm trying to say? But big up to Rio, man, because the funny thing is as well, Rio was at Chelsea, and I remember having a conversation with him, and his coaches at Chelsea were all my age group when I was there, which is mad. You know what I'm trying to say? So, yeah, man, it's a small world, put it that way. You know. Can you imagine putting literally everything into something to then have it basically stolen from you? Is testament to your strength to be able to discuss this stuff openly. Massive respect, Gav. Yeah, big up, bro, man. Appreciate it. And the thing is as well, yeah, I'm someone, yeah, that I don't really like to share, you know, personal stories, because, you know, sometimes I look at it as, you know, there'll be some people out there that will say, get over it. You know what I'm trying to say? There is people out there that will say that. But yeah, like there's a lot of things that I've experienced, man, in life, you know what I'm trying to say, and back in the academy that obviously people don't know about, because again, I know someone earlier said you were in the Spurs academy, and yeah, I was there for 2 years and Tottenham for 6 years. And it's one of them things where I'm not someone that just freely goes around and starts saying I was here, there, and everywhere, you know, because I don't feel I need to go and do that. But again, you can see from how passionate I am when I talk about football and what I talk about, you can see that there's a background there. You know what I'm trying to say? And as I said, yeah, I've had years of experience, man, of playing, watching, coaching, you know. And as I say, the academy was my life. Like, I was in the academy from the ages of 9. You know what I'm trying to say? And again, if you've seen my my Chelsea academy part 1 and part 2, as I said, man, you'll see some insights there in it, you know. But guys, yeah, if anyone's got any other questions or any other comments, then yeah, let me know. We're gonna wrap it up in a little bit anyway. And again, make sure you smash the like button if you've enjoyed the content. And again, make sure you you sub to the channel if you enjoy the content and you're new in here as well. And guys, if you can hype the channel, most importantly, like, it'd be much appreciated if you guys can hype the channel. You know, I think it's on the description. Hype the channel and yeah, help this channel get some traction out there. Because again, it's free content, you know, and as I said, man, it's a proper footballing channel. You know, I only want people on here that want to discuss pure football. You know, if you're coming on there, you know, and if you're coming on there with negativity, your negativity is not welcome. I want to have proper footballing conversations, even if you don't agree with me. You know, that is what it's about. You know, I like having conversation on football. And again, if you enjoy your football content and you like having discussion, then yeah, feel free to come through and let me know, man. Yeah, but fuck that, get over it, shit. The experiences you've had are 1 in a million. The amount of content creators discussing football with zero background in the game should proudly talk about it. Yeah, Fitz, big up, man. I 100% hear that, you know, and this is why one of the content creators that I've watched from day is Ransom Bants. And the reason why I watch Ransom Bants, yeah, because Ransom Bants has had a very similar footballing career to myself. And not only do I respect what he talks about on football, you know, he actually, when I was at Chelsea, 2 of the guys that are actually from his area were in my academy team. You know what I'm trying to say? So he's someone that, you know, when I first started watching YouTube, I watched YouTube for him because a lot of what he says, you know, is coming from my background, you know, and I believe he played for Fulham and I want to say Brentford back in the day, I believe, you know, but he's someone that when it comes to content creators on here, he's one of the ones that I watch religiously because, you know, I mean, I respect his opinion on football. And again, there's not too many people, I believe, in this space that have had the academy background that I've had or what he's had, to my knowledge. You know, again, if there is, then I'll hold my hands up. But to my knowledge, I don't think there's too many, put it that way, you know. But as I said, man, yeah, is what it is. Yeah, that name is banned from this chat. It's banned from this chat. I'm not looking to discuss anything with that guy's name in it. It's just that simple. You know what I mean? But, and obviously you guys know why anyway. So guys, anyone seen the news today? Michael Carrick, obviously his new contract. Again, if you guys haven't seen the earlier stream, obviously the England squad was announced as well. Obviously Pep leaving City, you know, stepping down. Crazy, man. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, crazy, man. What's time? 6:55. Gav, did you see my Discord? Yeah, come on. Yeah, listen, I know that anyway. Michael Carrick, yeah, of course. Since Carrick's come to the club, he's amassed the most points out of any manager. It's a fact. You know what I'm trying to say? He's amassed the most points. Facts. So, and again, he's got given a 2-year contract. You know, it's not really a surprise, really. But listen, I'm just looking forward, man, to the transfer window. You know, there's talk about Ederson that's looking like it's going to get over the line. Again, Ederson's not my first, second, or third choice, but if he's coming in to replace Ugarte, you know, you can't really be that disappointed at it, really. You know, but yeah, you guys know who my preference is anyway. Nah, listen, people that are tarnishing Michael Carrick with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is lazy, because what you have to realize, yeah, is that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer should never have been there in the first place. He was only there because he stuck his leg out in '99 to win the Champions League final. Because had he never done that, he would never have been given that opportunity to manage Manchester United. Anyone being honest would actually tell you that, you know. And he wasn't a coach, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You know, he was there for vibes, you know. And as I said, man, people that are tarnishing Carrick and Ole as the same, you know, you have to give credit to Carrick. And I believe if Carrick gets given, yeah, the players that he should be given, there's no doubt in my mind that Man United, because I'm looking at the players we're going to sign and how we're going to play. a lot of players that Man United are being linked with, yeah, there's fans that don't want these players, but you have to look at the strengths and weaknesses of these players that are potentially coming in. Carlos Baleba being one of them. So, as I said, man, I'm looking forward to the transfer window first and foremost, because once I know how we're going to navigate through this transfer window, then I can start seeing how Manchester United are going to shape up this season, and Carrick definitely deserves an opportunity, man, to be managing Man United because of what he's done since he came in. 11 wins in 16 games. That is title winning form there. It is. It's title winning form. You can't say anything other than that. You know what? 2 losses, 11 wins. Michael Carrick's done a very good job, and his coaching staff as well. So let's just wait and see, man. But I'm optimistic, put it that way. Ollie only stayed so long because of 99 and the fact he would sit on the bench 95% of every season. Yeah, big up to Fitz. And again, I look at that, the fact that he was happy to sit on the bench 95% of the season, that's telling me one thing. Yeah, he hasn't got any ambition to better himself, really. Because yes, Manchester United are a massive club, but if you believe in yourself, and you bank on yourself, I'm sorry, man, you have when's the point that you look at yourself and say, maybe I have to leave United and go and forge my own career elsewhere. So again, he's happy to just be a sideman or a benchman, really. And again, I hear it, but I don't really look at that as a positive in that sense, But listen, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer for Manchester United was a crucial player for Man United in terms of a squad option. You know what I mean? Because at that time when we had Cole, York, Sheringham, and Solskjaer, 4 strikers, all 4 of them offered something different, and the days of 4 strikers now is not going to happen, because this is why I say, when I had someone come on there and tell me, a striker's job is to just score goals, it's far and away the truth, because the fact that a lot of teams play with 1 striker, the 1 striker now is designated with being able to link the play, create goals as well and score. This is why Harry Kane, is an anomaly, because Harry Kane does all parts of that job. But if you look at the average striker now, there ain't too many strikers that can do what Harry Kane does consistently. Score the amount of goals that he does, create, and be the best striker in the world. There ain't too many players that can do that. So when you're getting people that tell you a striker's job is to score goals, it's like it was maybe about 10, 15 years ago. But today's football, someone said football's evolved, and it has. And the striker's job in this era is not solely to just score goals. The only player that gets away with that is Erling Haaland. And the reason for that is because Erling Haaland scores an obscene amount of goals. So he's the one anomaly. But the majority of strikers in football today have to be able to do both sides of the job. It's just that, Gav, did you see Brighton or Bournemouth can be in the Champions League next season? Yeah, imagine that, man. That is crazy. Brighton and Bournemouth in the Champions League. Yeah, that's mad. That's mad. I think Bournemouth might be in there. Didn't because I think Aston Villa won the Europa and they're already guaranteed Champions League football anyway. I think they've now got the opportunity to be in Champions League, I believe. So it might be that. But if Bournemouth are in Champions League next season, man, that is crazy. With the amount of with their capacity, man, them being in the Champions League just doesn't seem real. You know what I'm trying to say? But that is testament as to how good of a job that Iraola has done. Because Bournemouth in the Champions League, man, is just odd. And Brighton obviously got United on Sunday, so you never know, man. See what happens. Do you rate the lap? Says Lumi. I do rate the lap. But again, the lap has declined at Chelsea, but I don't think that is solely on the lap. I think that's just the way Chelsea had been using him. You know what I mean? I think if the lap goes elsewhere, not saying he's going to be a world beater, but he'll be a lot better than what he's showing at Chelsea. You know, because he's not shit, but he hasn't been good at Chelsea, and I think that's more to do with how Chelsea are using him for me. Uh, what effect, if any, does it have on the academy when the first team coach gets sacked? So, what effect, if any, does it have on the academy when the first team coach gets sacked? Well, a lot of it depends on if the academy and the first team are playing in the same way. This is why if you look at Louis van Gaal, when Louis van Gaal was at Man United, this is why I was pissed off that Louis van Gaal got sacked. And again, you can hear it because Mourinho, the Pep Mourinho thing they wanted to do, you hear it, But the thing is, if you see the way the academy was playing, and in the first team, this is why when Louis van Gaal was plucking out players like Fosu Mensah and Wolfwick Jackson and Guillermo Varela and players like that from the reserves, and they were slotting into the system seamlessly, that wasn't because these guys were top players. It was because they were going into a system that the academy and the reserves and the first team were all playing. And again, if you think of the first team coach and the academy, there should be a link in that, So again, if I base it on Louis van Gaal's time at Manchester United, if a first team coach gets sacked, because the first team coach is obviously in charge of the coaching, it's in the title, it depends if the academy and that are playing the same way, because it's bound to have an effect on that, really, Big Up Man says, who do you support? Manchester United, and I also like Barcelona for many reasons as well. Yeah, it does. It's that, yeah. Do the academy players do better when the first do well? No, I wouldn't necessarily say that. A lot of it is the culture around the club. If you've got a good culture in the club, then again, that's going to seem down to the academy, of course. You know what I'm trying to say? But I wouldn't say that the academy players would do better if the first team are doing well. That's totally separate. If they're all playing in the same way, like in terms of the same style of play from first team to the academy, then it helps for the academy players to be, directed into the first team, because it's a seamless transition, really, because they're all doing the same thing. So, but guys, anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up. Big up to yourselves for coming through each and every time. As I said, make sure you smash that like button on your way out, and make sure you sub to the channel if you're new in here. And again, guys, if you can hype the channel as well. So if you go to the description, there might be an option to hype it. And again, if you want to check out my my days in the academy at Chelsea, part 1 and part 2, and then obviously the part 1 of Tottenham, which was last week, they are all in the playlist. Yeah, they're all in the playlist. So, and obviously today's one will be in there as well. So yeah, big up to yourselves for coming through. Big up to all the mods as well. And big up to all the newcomers. And yeah, let me know in the comments, guys, what you think, or if you guys have any other questions for me. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions for me based on my time at Tottenham. Big up to Fitz as well. Big up, bro, each and every time. And big up to Lumi Rain as well. And guys, as I said, I should be back. What's tomorrow? Saturday. I'm not sure if I'm back over the weekend, guys, because I'm going to make use of this weather. So the weekend might be a bit of a write-off for me, I'll be honest. But definitely back on Tuesday. So I'm going to do Manchester United's end of season player ratings. Yeah, I'm going to do Manchester United's end of season player ratings. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to start the, the World Cup major teams. Major teams. They're going to talk about the squads, the players that have been picked. And then we're going to devise the likely lineups for the first games of the tournament. So yeah, there's some content coming your way. So yeah, keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, over the weekend, I don't think I'll be live over the weekend. but I might be dropping some uploads. So yeah, keep an eye on that. So Milton says you were in Tottenham. Yeah, man. So as I said, check out the playlist, man. What's happened there? Yeah, check out the playlist, man. So as I said, I was at Tottenham for 6. I was at Chelsea for 6 years in the academy, and then Tottenham for 2 years. So yeah, check that out if you want to see the full stream. But other than that, guys, gonna wrap it up. Big up to yourselves each and every time. As I said, yeah, make sure you guys hype the channel hype the channel, like the channel as well, and you smash that like button. And yeah, guys, I'll catch you guys in a bit. Take it easy.